Is Samden's not here yet. Okay. What about Flavius? Nope. Dennis, hello.
Hello.
Hi. I think I'm actually just waiting for the presenter to join. I do have the slides, but hopefully he will be here in a moment. Carlos, do you also have the slides, or are you going to moderate in the event that Samden doesn't show up?
Hi, well, I can help moderate, but I don't think I have the slides, but I can ask Tom. Whom are we waiting for?
Oh, Samden, the presenter.
Okay.
Jennifer, hello. Tim, hello.
Hi.
We're just waiting for the presenter, but we have two options and we can take a vote as a group here. Option one is the host, or sorry, the presenter is Samden, who is in Blantyre right now, but we suspect that he's having connectivity issues. So option one is that I would present his slides. Option two is that we would have sort of a more informal discussion about the questions that were presented earlier. So maybe if you would like me to present, and I should say I was also I lived in Blantyre for a long time, so I'm not just doing a PowerPoint karaoke here. So if you would like to see the slides that the city and Samden prepared, maybe do a thumbs up. And if you would prefer to have a informal discussion, do a heart.
Hi, Liz.
Hi, Kumbo.
Yes, maybe I can try call. I think I saw Flavius joined, then he has left. He's host 500, but I can call Samden right now and just check with him.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
I can call them.
a couple thumbs ups. So why don't I just, we're just gonna load the slides. Let's just do that. And I mean, I think, oopsie daisy. I think, you know, we know this is always a challenge with, can everyone see that? Thumbs up, give me a yes or no. Yes, great, thanks, Tim. Okay, so Samden, I'm just conscious of time because we actually have to end the session in about 7 minutes. So I'm just gonna give you your money's worth. But what's really interesting about Blantyre, and this was prepared by the city council, is that it's actually a very large city, over 1 million people, growing very, very quickly. And only about 16% of the population is connected to the sewer. So that's really just the downtown core where, you know, the original settlers, colonizers lived. Currently, they have 5 treatment plants, but really only about 2 of them are working. partly because of the infrastructure at the treatment plant and partly because of breakages in the sewer line. So even the sewers that exist, the sewage doesn't necessarily arrive at those treatment plants. We did actually one of the shit flow diagrams. You might be familiar with the SFD initiative. And I think these numbers are actually a little bit low even, but there's probably about 60% of people, upwards to about 80% of people within Blantyre urban. So we're talking about a very, urban center that's growing quickly, that are using pit latrines. And within the city, there are a number of mechanical options. So the city, BCC is Blantyre City Council. They actually own and operate a single vacuum truck. There is several other private vacuum trucks and a new smaller model that was developed with an NGO. On the manual side, you can see the photo of a gulper here. Oh, I see Samdin. Wonderful. Samdin, did you want to take over? Samdin? Hi, Samdin. Can you hear me? Oh. Okay. So I'm sure many of you are familiar with the gulper.
Yes, madam.
Can you hear me, Samdin?
Yes, I can. We had problems to log in, but now we can see the slides. I'm Samdin Sewan, the Deputy Director for Health for Blantyre City Council.
Great. I'll move the slides for you, okay?
Since I've missed the other slides, we are now on formal manual pit emptying. What we're saying is we have some entrepreneurs who are doing the pit emptying manually. They're using semi machines, the gappers. So once they have that, they put the sludge into 2 drums and they collect the fecal sludge using pickup trucks. Next slide. We're going to go to the next slide. Yeah, the former ones, those who are using manual. Okay. In terms of solid waste, we have equipment, trucks, tractors, but the only challenge is that our refuse collection vehicles is quite old, and because of that, sometimes we experience frequent breakdowns. Next slide. You can move on to the next slide. Yes. In terms of challenges, like we said, the previous one, go to the previous slide on the challenges. Yes. The sanitation infrastructure is quite old, like the sewer system was put in place in the 50s. And because of that, it's experiencing a lot of pressure. And the refuse collection trucks, they're also aged, most of them more than 20 years old. In Malawi, to access refuse collection vehicles, they're quite expensive, so that it's very difficult actually to get new ones. Similarly, the vacuum tankers, they're quite expensive. The fecal sludge treatment infrastructure is not that conducive to fecal sludge. Mainly it's there to handle septic tanks and the sewer and the sewerage. Next slide. In conclusion, we're saying the council would need to be supported to rehabilitate its aged infrastructure and also to put up its infrastructure that is efficient and sustainable to treat fecal sludge. And also the council requires support to acquire refuse collection trucks and also to construct a landfill. Next slide. Yeah. Who would want to pose these questions to the audience? What are the objectives of the private sector? And maybe perhaps the private sector can assist in coming up with the comments as to what barriers they face for them to provide universal and safe services. How could they be supported by the public sector and development partners? Next slide. Yeah, and for the public sector, what could be the objectives of the public sector, and what barriers are there to the public sector that are provided for the public sector to provide universal and safe service? What options does the public sector have for increasing self-service coverage? Is it different? Is this different to inclusive or for poor coverage? Next slide.
So those are the slides and those are the discussion topics. So I think actually, you're probably the person maybe who's best to answer these questions to start the conversation on the public sector, and then I'll monitor the chats. And if someone has a question for Samdin, excuse me, please just raise your hand. But I think Samdin, you can go ahead and start addressing some of these questions, especially as the representative from the public sector.
All right. As for the public sector, I do not know whether we will respond ourselves or the audience will come in, but maybe perhaps I can start. The objectives of the public sector, in as far as sanitation is concerned, is to provide sanitation services to all residents in the city. And because at the moment, we are allowing the private to come in to do sanitation as a business. We're there to regulate them, to supervise them, so that we ensure that the residents are getting the quality service. But the private sector also, they are doing their business in such a manner that it is safe and conducive, and they're not polluting the environment. As regards to the barriers, why maybe perhaps which are not making us maybe provide universal and safe services, it all hinges on resources. If the public sector is adequately financed, adequately supported, it will be easy to reach out to each and every corner of the city, so that at the end of the day, every resident could be enjoying safe and sustainable sanitation. As to what options the public sector have in increasing service coverage, obviously would be seeking support, maybe perhaps from the development partners and even the private themselves, so that at the end of the day, if they support the public sector, it will be very easy to reach out to the residents with the safe and the sustainable sanitation service. Maybe I should stop there, but maybe, yeah.
There's some questions in the chat, which I'll just read to you. Tim would like to thank you. And he's asking if there are any tax incentives or tax exceptions for drivers or for pit emptying companies. Are there financial incentives that the government may offer to people to participate in the sanitation sector?
Kamwani Pradesh. I think mainly when it comes to incentives for the medium tiers.
Yeah, in terms of taxes.
It has to do with the licensing that we normally ask them to do. So what we've been doing, like here in Blantyre, is to sit down with them on a round table discussion, ask them what they think in terms of the amounts that they would pay. Previously, it was one amount. Like if you have a small vehicle, you have a bigger vehicle, it was the same figure. But then after a roundtable discussion with them, we devised a means of categorizing the licenses so that everybody pays according to their volume. That we have managed to do, and the pit emptiers, we are happy with that. We have seen most people registering with the council. Again, we did the same on the tipping fee, because at the disposal site, they are supposed to contribute something for the management of the disposal sites. Initially, it was the same challenge. The rates were higher, and they didn't consider the variations that are there in terms of the volumes or the capacities of the BDM tiers. So we have also done the same. We have categorized the BDM tiers, and they are paying according to their category. In terms of the incentives, in as far as the BDM exercises are concerned, that's what we've done so far for Blantyre.
So if I understand correctly, then the private sector has to register their business with the city council and also pay a tipping fee?
Yes.
And so what are the incentives for the private sector to do that? Why would they want to do that and not just dump illegally?
Like I said, sanitation service is supposed to be done by the public sector. In our case, should be done by Blantyre City Council. But now that the private sector would want to do it as their business, it means they are doing it on our behalf. However, much as they will be making profit, but they need to be regulated. And that's why we need to license them. Licensing is just a means of having an eye on them to ensure that they have the right equipment, they have the right personal protective equipment, they have the right infrastructure for them to do that kind of business. But as to add on what my colleague has said, we listen to them, see what their problems are, and together see how best we can do, so that at the end of the day, they also have to make profit as they desire.
Great, thank you. We also have a question from Dennis, who asks if the pit emptiers are potentially using other more rudimentary, more basic tools apart from the gulper, or is it primarily the gulpers that are being used?
In Blantyre, it appears the gulper is a very basic equipment that they use. And it's possible, perhaps, we could have very rudimentary technology, but that we're not aware of. And it's not promoted because it's not safe. And usually that kind of method is very difficult here to manage. But so far it appears the most basic one is the gulper, which at the end of the day, they fill the drums and they use the open trucks to dispose the fecal sludge.
Okay. Are there any other questions from the audience before I switch over to the other slides?
Maybe I will just raise my voice and ask. Yeah, thanks a lot for your input, and good to see actually that you already consider the smaller emptiers. Did I understand it correctly that the smaller the emptier business, the less they have to pay then? So not only volume wise, but also then really that there's, because you can imagine if you have a bigger business, then actually you also operate in areas with higher income, and then basically your regulation comes in. But for smaller businesses, at some point, you might want to encourage them and to reduce their costs as much as possible.
Okay, it's true what you have said, but the other actions that the city has done to make sure that we reduce in terms of transportation cost is to increase the number of disposal sites. Some time back, we only had one disposal site, and it meant people to travel all the way to that disposal site. But when we noted that the distance was also playing a role in increasing the cost for emptying a pit, we, through other development partners, we managed to rehabilitate some wastewater treatment plants, and they are specially distributed within the city. So by rehabilitating the other treatment plants, it meant reducing the transportation time from source to the disposal site, and that also help the road in when it comes to the cost for the MTRs.
Yeah, thanks. That's for sure one important aspect, decentralization in that point. And another idea was the one of, popular idea, of course, sanitation levy, but it would be very interesting to hear from your side, what's your experience with it? Is it a feasible option to have like a sanitation levy, for example, on the water bills?
Maybe perhaps that would be something to consider, but at the moment, we do not have that kind of arrangement in Blantyre. For us to have sanitation levy, obviously, it means the laws, bylaws, they have to be changed to accommodate that. So at the moment, we do not have that in our bylaws.
I mean, also,
Maybe just
the
to
water
wrap,
provider. Sorry.
just to add to what my colleague has said, I think in Blantyre here it's very different to our colleagues in other cities where water supply and wastewater management are managed under one roof. Here, water supply is in another institution, wastewater management is another institution. Now, to factor in the sanitation levy in water supply, it has been always a challenge, and that's why my colleague was saying we need to change some regulation, and that is a task that will take longer than now.
Yes, sure. I can understand that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry, thanks so much. It's unfortunate, but we're getting called back to the main room. So I'm just going to ask if you can go back to the plenary. This is the how to do it. So go back to Pathable. I'll end this session and then you will rejoin the main event, okay? And then we'll see you back in the plenary just now. Thank you.